Welcome. Thank you for joining the Live in Divine Harmony podcast. I'm Carmen, your divine synergist of Heart's Joy. I'm an awakened person of purpose, a spiritual life coach. I have a passion for life. I'm an author, a podcast host, and a numerologist. And in this week's episode on the podcast, we're going to talk about all things Mercury retrograde, everyone's favorite time of year. And this time it starts on August 23rd, 2023. So, before we dive in, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode as well. First, let's talk about what does retrograde mean? That is a common question I receive. And think of the planets are not going backwards per se. The planets are speeding up so quickly that it appears to us on Earth that the planet is moving backwards. Think of yourself in, let's say, riding in a train, and you notice someone riding in a vehicle next to the train. And because the train is going so quickly forward, it appears that what is riding next to the train, going along next to the side of the train, is actually going backwards. It's an optical illusion. And it is a wonderful period for healing. It is a time for resetting, rethinking, reviewing, redoing. How many times do we get a chance to hit the rewind button and have a do-over? I don't know a whole lot of times in our life when we get that opportunity. Now, Mercury retrograde somehow gets a bad rap because it happens at least 3 times a year, sometimes 4. And because of what the planet Mercury represents and what it impacts, which is communication, timing sometimes, definitely communication, electronics, and sometimes contracts. We're going to talk about that here soon. The myths and the reality of, can you sign a contract? Is it a good idea to sign a contract during Mercury retrograde? So, and travel, that's the other thing that it impacts. So because it goes quote unquote retrograde, and it doesn't go anywhere, it's just the terminology that we use. We experience that planet having a retrograde at least 3 times a year. And because of what it impacts, sometimes it can feel frustrating. We tend to joke around about it, make fun of it, and blame our problems on these astrological alignments instead of truly taking ownership and responsibility for them. And this is why I talk a lot about what these retrogrades mean when they happen, how you can work with the energies to get you out of that victim energy, because it's a low level energy, frequency, vibration, and truly harness the power that you have. And essentially, you're taking back your power because you're choosing something different for yourself. So in this episode, I'm going to focus on Mercury retrograde. I'm going to touch on the current retrogrades because we do have a lot of planets happening right now in retrograde as well, and what you can focus on at this particular time. So Mercury retrograde, so keep in mind when we talk about the general meanings of Mercury going retrograde and what it impacts, it's also going to shift every single time that planet goes retrograde. And this is true for all planets. I'm solely focused on Mercury right now. And I have a couple of tools in my life tool belt, if you will, that I'd like to give to you. And they're all in the online community I have. It's hearts-joy.mn for mightynetworks.co. And one of them is a list of questions I got from Elizabeth Peru. Follow her, by the way. She's phenomenal. And I journal about these questions during the pre-shadow period, every single Mercury retrograde. So what is pre-shadow period? And let me say that not everybody talks about pre-shadow, post-shadow period. Always take what I say for whatever resonates for you. If it doesn't resonate, just let it fall away. So Pre-shadow always happens a couple weeks prior to a retrograde, and a couple of weeks there's a post-shadow period, a couple of weeks after the retrograde. So think of you're getting prepared by the universe during the pre-shadow phase, and that if you think of an airplane, you're boarding the airplane's starting to take off into the air. That's your pre-shadow phase, okay? And in this case, it started August 3rd. And the last day for the pre-shadow phase is August 22nd. So you can still think back to that time frame, answer these journal questions, which again are in the free online community. And that's one of the ways that'll help you understand what exactly you get to experience and will experience during this Mercury retrograde. The other one, I have a link to a book. It's a Mercury retrograde book, co-authored by Yasmin Boland. Love her as well. And you can use it literally for every Mercury retrograde. Now, anytime you work with any of her offerings, always look at your rising sign. And if you need help with that, please reach out. I can help you get that information. And the combination of journaling during pre-shadow and reading this book, it helps me personally understand what I get to experience during this Mercury retrograde period. And what tends to happen is, yes, we're going to feel frustrated, I should say, because that's what happens when we are expanding, when we're experiencing change, and it's uncomfortable. And there's a lot of unknowns. And that's what happens during retrograde periods. And sometimes we feel stuck. And I had said something the other day to a friend that, well, it's how I feel. It's not the reality of the situation. So keep in mind, those are two totally different things. Now, this Mercury retrograde dates are August 23rd through September 15th. And then September 16th for a couple of weeks will be that post-shadow period. Now, during Mercury retrograde, we focus on the halfway point, which I will talk about closer till time. And that's going to be your action time. So essentially at the first half, if you will, of Mercury retrograde, you are simply gathering information subconsciously, consciously. And then half time, direct time, you are taking action on it, whatever you had discovered in that first half. And now that action phase happens in the second half, as well as anything that didn't occur during Mercury retrograde that needed to have occurred is going to happen during a post-shadow period, post-shadow phase. Now, a lot of us are suggesting that whatever you had started at one point in time, that you pick back up that project and start it again. Maybe it was research on a project you wanted to launch. Whatever it was, continue, pick it back up and start to work on it again during this time. This is one of the many ways where you are going to utilize this energy of the planets and work with it. It's a boost for you during this time. That's how I want you to think of it, okay? Keep in mind, we also have Pluto, Neptune, Chiron, Saturn, Venus, and retrograde as well. So it's an extremely powerful time. And, Venus is going to go retrograde for 40 days. And that is a planet that doesn't go retrograde very often. And that ends September 4th. So, and I also did a podcast a few weeks ago. If you want to learn about each of those individually, how they're going to impact you, go check out that podcast. And really want you to focus on Mercury right now, because now is an important time for you to focus on who you are, what do you want, where do you want to be, And what does the second half of the year 2023 look like for you? We just had a powerful new moon, a powerful new moon, where I had asked you to focus on the next 6 months of your life. What is it that you really wanted to experience over the next 6 months? And so you're going to continue to focus on that during this time where Mercury, I almost said goes backwards. It doesn't go backwards, goes retrograde. Okay. If you have any questions, if you are confused about anything, please reach out. Go to hearts-joy.mn for mindynetworks.co and feel free to ask your questions in there. And I want to make sure that you have every tool in your arsenal to help you get through these times, to truly take your power back and understand what it is that's happening in your life and how can you move forward at this particular point in time. Mercury retrograde is an extremely powerful time, especially with the rest of these retrogrades happening right now, where it can transform your life if you allow it to. So before I hop off here, I highly, highly encourage you to set aside time. Could be 15, 20 minutes every week, once a week, couple times a week, to journal on what is coming up for you. Go to the community, get those questions for the pre-shadow period, because you will have a message at the end of every Mercury retrograde period. I promise you. Messages just for you of what it is that has either come up for you to heal, something that you get to work on. Self-awareness is key in order to have something be different in your life. So I look forward to connecting with you soon in the Creating a Life You Love online community. It's free, by the way. And until then, until the next podcast episode, I will see you in there. Sending you much love. We'll see you soon.